Hi there, I'm Jenny. 2 weeks before my wedding, I found a note on my parents' kitchen counter. Wedding's off. Expect a call from my lawyer. No call, no explanation, just silence. But that wasn't the worst part. They used my wedding plans for someone else. My own sister, my money, my venue, even my dress reassigned like I was never part of it. What kind of family does that? And what happened 48 hours later? I promise it changed everything. I arrived at my parents' house earlier than usual that morning. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, casting that soft, dim orange light across the windows of the quiet Charleston neighborhood. I'd planned to drop off the final cake samples and the newly printed invitations before heading into work. Everything had been scheduled down to the hour these last few weeks, and I'd been careful not to overstep, especially with my mother. I let myself in through the side door like I always had. No voices, no faint sound of the television humming in the background, not even the soft clink of my mom's favorite teacup. The house felt still. Then I saw it. A single sheet of paper lay folded in half on the kitchen counter, right where my mother usually left. Cheerful post-it notes, reminders about flower pickups or seating charts. But this wasn't her usual handwriting. This wasn't blue ink with loopy curves. This was black, sharp, and cold. Wedding's off. Expect a call from my lawyer. That was it. No greeting, no signature, no damn explanation. For a moment my body just froze. No breath, no movement. My mind went silent as if it couldn't process the fact that 7 words had just detonated everything I had been planning for the last year. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even text my fiancé Jace. Instead, I picked up my phone and typed one word back to my mother. Understood. I drove home in complete silence. The roads were almost empty, but I couldn't hear the hum of the engine or the soft thuds of tires over pavement. It felt like my body had gone somewhere else and left me behind to deal with the wreckage. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't call anyone. I sat on the edge of my couch, still in my shoes, replaying every conversation from the past month. What had I missed? Was it when I disagreed about the number of guests? Or when I told Karen she couldn't bring a +1, she just started dating? No, this wasn't sudden. This wasn't a tantrum. Someone had planned this. By nightfall, I still hadn't heard from them. Not one call, not even a follow-up to that note. But I got something else. A message from my cousin Courtney popped up on my screen. Hey, I think this was meant for someone else, but it showed up in my email. You should see it. Attached was a screenshot of a group chat titled Monroe Family Wedding Changes. My heart pounded as I scanned the names. Julia Karen Lyle. They'd been planning a restructured celebration. The same venue, the same guest list, just with Karen. Karen, my younger sister recently engaged, was now the centerpiece of the event that was once mine. The florist's invoice had been updated, replacing my name. The photographer's new draft timeline listed Karen and Zach as the couple. I wasn't just removed, I was replaced. I stared at the screen, reading the same message over and over. Karen had even joked in one message, "At least now the photos will be cute." My mom replied with a heart emoji. My fingers trembled. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from the kind of fury that only comes when someone peels your skin off slowly while smiling to your face. The worst part, I had let them manage the venue. I'd trusted them with the deposits, the accounts, the scheduling, because they were family, because they told me it was easier that way, easier to erase me. I thought back to the time Mum insisted we pick a neutral dress. Something simple, she'd said, so you don't overshadow the room. Or when Dad told me he'd handle the final payment. Don't worry, sweetie. We've got it covered. But this wasn't about cost. It wasn't about preferences or logistics. This was intentional. They didn't just pull the rug out from under me. They'd wrapped me in it and dragged me out the door while replacing me with a smile. And they didn't think I'd fight back. They'd miscalculated badly. I opened a new folder on my laptop titled For the Record. Screenshots, receipts, messages. I began dragging everything in one by one. No one would believe me without proof, but I wasn't doing this to convince anyone. I was doing it to protect myself from this day forward. Because now I understood something I should have realized a long time ago. They never planned to share the spotlight with me. I was just a filler until someone better came along. As I stared at that digital folder starting to fill with evidence, my voice came out barely louder than a breath. They think I won't fight. That's the only part they got wrong. I didn't always stay silent. I used to fight back until they taught me it wasn't worth it. Over the years, I learned that arguing with people who pretended I mattered only when they needed something was like pouring water into a cracked vase. Useless. And now, with that folder filling up on my laptop, I sat motionless, letting memories drift in like fog over the marshes. 2 weeks before that note appeared on the kitchen counter, I had a dress fitting appointment downtown. It was at the boutique Julia insisted we use the same one she had bragged about, going to when she was my age. I was nervous that day, not because of the dress, but because I knew Julia wouldn't show up. She'd already started pulling back, cancelling phone calls, skipping vendor meetings. But I clung to the possibility that maybe this moment would bring us together again. She didn't come, but someone else did. Karen! She strolled in late, latte in hand, fake surprised. "Oh, I didn't know you were here today," she said, flashing that rehearsed smile I'd seen her use on waiters and gym trainers. The boutique owner looked confused. "You're not the bride." Karen laughed like it was all a big mix-up. "Not today," she said. "I was just nearby and thought I'd peek in." She sat on the velvet bench and started scrolling through her phone. I remember standing there half in my dress, staring at her like she'd just stepped into my reflection. When I walked out of the fitting room to look in the mirror, she snapped a photo. "Lighting is perfect in here," she said, not even asking. I should have walked out then. The next day, the boutique emailed me. "Final adjustments complete per updated measurements. Order ready for pickup under Karen Monroe." They had taken my dress. Not metaphorically, literally. My name wasn't on the invoice anymore, and the boutique said it was per family request. Family. I didn't respond. I just sat at my kitchen table for hours, fingers wrapped around a coffee cup that went cold twice. At some point, I opened the boutique's Instagram out of habit, and there it was, a reel, a perfectly curated little montage tagged with autumn leaves, and the caption, "So happy for Karen." Perfect for a wedding. I watched it. Karen walked down the aisle in my dress in my venue, with my string quartet playing the same piece I'd handpicked for my entrance. Every frame glowed like a magazine spread. Julia and Lyle beamed with pride. They toasted champagne. They hugged Karen like she was the crown jewel of the family. And not once was I mentioned. Not a thank you, not a photo tucked into a corner, not even a tag on social media. I wasn't even a ghost at the party. I stared at the screen in stunned silence. The comments rolled in beneath the video like confetti. "She's glowing. Julia raised such a beautiful bride. This family knows how to throw a wedding." The irony nearly made me laugh. That night, I waited until the apartment fell quiet again before I picked up the phone. I dialed Jace. He was in Atlanta finishing up a last-minute project. I hadn't told him about the note yet or the video. I wanted to protect him from the mess, but I also knew he had a right to know. His voice came on the line, calm but cautious. "Jenny, I was starting to worry." I swallowed hard. "You didn't see it yet, did you?" "See what?" I paused. Never mind. Just they cancelled it. My parents left me a note. What? His voice dropped. They cancelled our wedding. Not cancelled, I said. Hijacked. They gave it to Karen. He didn't speak for a moment, then evenly. Do you want to sue them? I breathed in slowly. Not yet. But I've started saving everything. There was something about saying it aloud that made it more real. It grounded me. Jace didn't need to say anything else. He just listened. And in that moment, I was grateful for silence that didn't feel like rejection. After we hung up, I sat alone in the living room. Lights dimmed, just me and the soft blue glow of my laptop. I clicked play on the reel again. Frame by frame, I watched it. Karen twirling on the dance floor in the lace I paid for. Julia holding her hands to her chest, pretending to cry. Lyle clinking glasses with Zach like nothing in the world had ever been complicated. Then came the toast. Julia stood up at the head table glass, raised camera catching every angle of her glistening eyes. To the daughter who made the family proud, she said. I hit pause, my finger hovered over the space bar, but I couldn't press it again. That one sentence echoed louder than the string quartet ever could. I rewound it, listened again. Not a daughter, not our daughters, just the daughter. She was right, though. Karen had made them proud because she played the game. She kept her mouth shut. She never challenged their decisions. She smiled when they told her who to love, what to wear, where to go. I used to think I was the rebellious one, the disappointment. But maybe all I ever did wrong was try to live a life they couldn't control. I closed the laptop slowly, the faint click of the lid settling into silence. They think they erased me, I whispered. But I'm the only one who remembers everything. My laptop stayed closed on the kitchen table long after the screen went black. I sat still, surrounded by silence that didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt loaded, like the kind of silence that waits to see if you'll finally snap. I didn't, not yet. Instead, I got up, walked to the drawer I rarely touched, and pulled out my old phone. The cracked one I stopped using after I got promoted. It was mostly dead weight now, but it still had photos, voicemails, and voice memos from years ago. I told myself I was looking for something practical, maybe old vendor quotes or a contact from my early wedding planning. But deep down, I was hunting for proof. I wasn't losing my mind, something that reminded me this didn't come out of nowhere. I scrolled through the folders until one labeled Holiday Dinner 2021 caught my eye. My finger hovered. That Thanksgiving had been odd. Julia was unusually quiet. Karen kept going on about a marketing job she hadn't even accepted yet. Dad was glued to the football game. I remembered stepping out to take a walk around the block, needing air after Karen snapped at me for always being so sensitive. Apparently, I had left my phone recording on the table by mistake. When I pressed play, the background clinks of silverware filled the room again. Then Julia's voice. Too casual, too smooth. She's a sweet girl, she said. And I already knew she meant me. But she's just not like Karen. Not driven, not special. She's fine. That word fine cut deeper than anything vulgar ever could. It wasn't rage or rejection. It was dismissal. Like I was a bland wallpaper in their home, not worth changing, not worth admiring. She doesn't push herself. She's content. And that's okay. But Karen has potential. I stopped the recording. I didn't need to hear more. My face didn't flush. My heart didn't pound. I just sat there, jaw clenched, staring out the window as a group of kids biked down the street laughing freely. So this was the story they'd told themselves for years, that I was fine and therefore not worth fighting for. But it hadn't always been like that. There was a time, brief as it was, when I pushed back. Colton. 6 years ago, he had been the first person I ever let in fully. The kind of man who planned weekend trips and surprised me with used books he thought I'd like. I remember the afternoon he invited me to Edisto Beach. Just the two of us. We were supposed to leave Friday morning. Instead, I woke up to a message. Jenny, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I think your family was right. I'm not enough. No fight. No second chance, just silence after that. For years, I believed he'd simply fallen out of love. Maybe found someone easier. But as I sat now, the words from that old voicemail echoed differently. My family was right. He didn't say you were wrong. He said they were right. Back then, I couldn't accept it. So I buried it. Never told anyone, not even Jace. I reached for my water glass and stared at the condensation trail it left on the table. I wasn't crying. There weren't any tears left for this version of myself. Instead, I stood and walked to the cabinet above the fridge. That's where I kept the documents. The mortgage I signed alone, the receipts from the wedding venue, a printed spreadsheet. Julia insisted on managing to keep things in order, she had said. Every page I pulled confirmed something deeper than mismanagement. This wasn't chaos. It was strategy. The kind that erased me slowly, so by the time I noticed I'd already disappeared. They'd taken my wedding, my voice, my dress. What else had they stolen in the name of family? The worst part wasn't what I found. It was how easy it was to find a clean sweep. No record of deposits made under my name. No recognition of my work. The guest list, edited weeks ago, had my email removed. The floral arrangements were now listed under Karen M. My entire presence scrubbed. I whispered the question again as I sat back down. A whisper that didn't feel rhetorical anymore. What else have they taken? And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for asking. That moment of stillness was broken by the sharp ring of my phone. Unknown number. I usually let those go, but this time something in my gut made me press. Accept. Jenny, the voice asked, nervous, familiar. I didn't answer right away. It's Colton, he said. I heard about your wedding, and I thought maybe you should know more about what happened back then. The room spun slightly, not from surprise, but from recognition. This wasn't a ghost returning. It was a piece of the puzzle I'd never been allowed to hold. I leaned forward, pressing my palm to my forehead. A familiar ache built behind my eyes. I kept my voice calm. I'm listening. Colton didn't hesitate once I said I was listening. She threatened me, Jenny. I didn't know what else to do. His voice cracked, but I didn't speak. I needed the full story, not comfort. She didn't just tell me to back off. She called my office. My manager said I was involved with someone who had mental instability, that you were emotionally fragile, needed constant care, and that our relationship was affecting your health, that I was contributing to it. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, steadying myself. My knuckles ached from how tight my hand clenched the phone. I said nothing, but inside something collapsed. Not like a building that falls, more like a dam that quietly cracks piece by piece until the flood becomes unstoppable. She said if I really loved you, I'd walk away so you could focus on yourself. And I believed her. I thought I was doing the right thing. He paused. I could hear it. The regret, the weight he'd been carrying all these years. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. My voice came out calm, nearly flat. It doesn't, I said. But thank you for telling me. We exchanged no goodbyes. I hung up, placed the phone on the table, and stared at the window where the street light outside glowed over empty pavement. Then I picked up my own thoughts, like shards on a tile floor, fitting them into something resembling a timeline. The pattern was clear now, not just in hindsight, but in cold, deliberate detail control. Julia didn't just block my path. She bulldozed it and then told me I had no sense of direction. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold. My fingers hovered over Jace's contact. He hadn't reached out in days, and I'd been grateful for the space. But now I needed answers only he could give. When he picked up, his tone was cautious. "Hey," he said. "I need you to be honest with me," I said. "And I need you to do it now." There was a pause just long enough for me to imagine him sitting on his couch, hand on his forehead like he always did when he felt cornered. "I know what this is about," he said, "and you're right to ask." He told me about the day he went to my parents' house months before he proposed. She called me into the sunroom. "Your dad wasn't there." She had a folder. Said it was something to help me make the right choice before the engagement. He sighed. Inside were copies of your old credit statements from years ago. Notes about your panic attacks after college. Even your ER bill from when you fainted at work. She told me she kept them for emergencies. "And the prenup?" I asked. Jace hesitated. "She had one drafted. Said it was just precaution to protect the family's assets in case things didn't work out." "Did you sign it?" "No, but I also didn't tell you. I didn't want to cause a rift. A rift. As if there hadn't already been a canyon." "Thank you," I said, and ended the call before I said something I couldn't take back. I stood up, walked into my bedroom, and pulled the small metal box from the back of my closet. Inside were the documents Julia had always said to hold on to just in case. The venue deposit confirmation. It had my name on it. The floral arrangement invoice had come through my nonprofit's account, the one I opened 5 years ago, and at the very bottom, folded neatly in a cream envelope, was the budgeting agreement she'd handed me 2 months ago. I had signed it without much thought. Back then, she said it was to help keep expenses organized. What I held now, though, was no budgeting guide. It was a contract, a silent transfer of assets, a neat little tool to move things out of my hands and into Karen's. I stared at the signature line mine above a line that said, "Authorized financial reassignment for family redistribution purposes." They didn't just cancel my wedding, they reallocated my life. I returned to the living room and dropped the papers on the table. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I moved with a new kind of focus, one I hadn't felt in a long time. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and labeled it Restitution. Then I opened my email to Julia. Roll. Subject: "This ends now." The body was short, sharp, precise. "You've taken enough from me. If you continue, I will take back everything legally, publicly, permanently. Consider this your last warning." I clicked send. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. Not because I was done, but because I had finally started. I didn't wait for her reply. I shut the laptop, pushed my chair back, and walked to the window. The sun was beginning to creep over the edge of the rooftops, casting that strange grey-blue light across the empty street, outside the kind of light that feels like a warning. I stood there longer than I meant to, arms folded, heartbeat steady but hard. I wasn't expecting peace. Not from them, not from this. But I thought maybe the silence would last a little longer. It didn't. A buzz from my phone dragged my eyes down to the screen. Notification from Facebook. Karen had posted something. I hesitated, thumb hovering above the screen. Then I tapped. Her post was long crafted, the kind of message someone spends time rehearsing, not just in writing, but in the mirror over breakfast, while twisting a wedding ring she didn't earn. She called me unstable, accused me of fabricating stories of having a long-standing pattern of emotional volatility. She claimed I was undermining the unity of the family and lashing out because I couldn't handle not being the center of attention. Julia had liked the post. Lyle left a heart reaction. My stomach turned, but I didn't cry. I didn't pace or shout or throw the phone like I would have years ago. Instead, I opened my screenshot tool, captured the post, the comments, the timestamps, saved them into the folder titled Restitution. If they thought this would break me, they hadn't been paying attention. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table and stared at the post again, not to read it but to study the responses. Former family friends, chiming in, most of them vague but loaded. So sorry you're going through this, Karen? Or some people just can't let go of the past. They were trying to shame me into silence, but they didn't realize I had stopped playing their game. I tapped Mara's contact. She answered on the second ring. Ian. Her voice was tight, cautious. Hey, I saw Karen's post. You okay? There was a pause. I saw it, he replied. I was wondering if you'd want to meet up. I could really use a familiar face. Mara inhaled sharply, then exhaled like she was about to deliver news. No one wants to say out loud. I don't think that's a good idea, she said. Your mom's people listen to her, Jenny. She helped my cousin get into that law firm. And after that thing with your aunt's will, well, I can't risk it. I blinked. No hard feelings, she added quickly. It's just complicated. I thanked her anyway, hung up, and I sat there for a while, letting that moment settle, not as betrayal, but as confirmation. Julia's power didn't stop at the front door. It ran through the veins of this town like a quiet current no one dared swim against. I took my time that afternoon, did the dishes, cleaned the bathroom, watered the succulents by the windowsill, let the silence stretch not out of avoidance, but because I needed the space to think without their noise. At dusk, I picked up the phone again. This time I called Karen. She answered like she'd been expecting it. Finally decided to talk. I'm only going to say this once, I said, keeping my voice low and even. Take down the post. There was a beat of silence, then laughter. Not the amused kind, the mean kind, the kind she used in high school when she knew she had backup. You can't seriously think anyone believes you now, she said. You sound paranoid. Just like Mom said. I'm not asking for belief, I said. I'm asking for space. If you keep this up, I won't stay quiet and I won't just defend myself. I'll dismantle every version of this family you're clinging to. Is that a threat? She snapped. No, I said that's a boundary. The difference is I'll keep mine. Whether you keep yours is up to you. I ended the call before she could respond. 2 hours later, as the sky dimmed into a soft purple haze, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the peephole. A man in uniform holding an envelope. Courier delivery for Jenny Monroe. I signed, thanked him, and closed the door. The envelope was heavy, thick paper. I sat on the couch, slid a finger under the seal, and pulled out a neatly folded document. Legal notice of removal, beneficiary revocation. The language was formal, cold, bullet-pointed. As of this date, Jenny Monroe is hereby removed from all family estate considerations, including property financial trusts and personal assets managed by the Monroe Family Trust. No reasons listed. At the bottom in clean slanted ink was a single closing line. As of now, you are no longer considered part of this family's future. I stared at it, felt no rush of heat, no bile at the back of my throat, just a long, slow breath leaving my chest. I folded the paper carefully, set it on the table next to the screenshots, then stood up and walked toward my desk. They thought they'd buried me, but all they'd done was draw a line. and for the first time in my life, I was ready to step over it. I didn't sit down right away. My legs carried me to the cabinet across the room, the one I'd avoided opening since last winter. On the top shelf, behind a stack of old holiday cards and unopened scented candles, sat a worn black binder and a hard drive labeled Finances Backup. I laid them both on the kitchen table and opened my laptop. There were 2 versions of myself stored inside that spreadsheet. The woman they saw scattered unfocused, always a step behind. And the woman they didn't, meticulous, prepared quiet because she knew numbers never needed to shout. It took nearly 3 hours to go line by line. I revisited every Venmo transaction Karen ever requested with the word urgent every bank draft, where I covered their utilities just until Dad's bonus, clears every florist receipt from the venue they claimed I hadn't paid for. By the time I was done, the total sat just above $38,000. I printed the pages, slipped them into plastic sleeves, and filled the binder. Then I labeled it Ledger of Record. I wasn't building a case. I was building a wall they couldn't pretend not to see. Around noon the next day, I stepped out for a walk just to clear my head. I didn't get 2 blocks before my phone vibrated. Login failed. Shared Dropbox folder. Monroe family planning. Another buzz followed. Access revoked. Joint house account. I stopped in my tracks. The sidewalk felt narrower somehow. The world didn't tilt. It just clarified. I called the bank immediately, pressing 0 until I reached a human. I need to confirm activity on an account I co-managed. I said, giving the details flatly. The rep pulled it up. There was a change submitted last night, a power of attorney form from Mr. Lyle Monroe revoking your co-ownership. Was it notarized? Yes, ma'am. Then you'll need to see my file, I said. I'm sending over documents now. Until you sort this out, freeze the account. That money is in dispute. She hesitated, but my tone didn't. Within 20 minutes, the freeze was confirmed. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something sharper, like setting a bone that had healed, crooked and finally snapping it into place. Back home, I made another folder, titled it In Case of Public Denial. Inside, it went everything that proved my version of this story wasn't a narrative. It was a timeline. Text messages from Karen promising repayment, email threads with Julia discussing shared costs, digital contracts signed under my name for venue services now credited to them. I didn't plan to post them, but I wanted them ready. People like my family didn't fear confrontation. They feared being unmasked, not with emotion, but with receipts. And that was the one thing I'd always kept. I closed the laptop, stood up, and made tea. The act was simple, mundane even, but it steadied me. My hands didn't shake as I poured. My breath didn't hitch when I sat back down. I wasn't waiting for them to fix it anymore. I wasn't even waiting for justice. I was laying brickwork. At 8:17 p.m, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I recognized the area code. My old banker's office. I answered on the second ring. Ms. Monroe. Yes. This is Allison from Mallister Financial. I think it would be best if you came in tomorrow. We received a document this morning. It lists your signature, but something about it didn't sit right with me. What kind of document? It references property reassignment, partial title transfer on a home under the Monroe family umbrella. We flagged it because your existing file shows no prior authorization. My chest didn't tighten. My voice didn't rise. Do you still have it? Yes, keep it secure. I'll be in at 9:00. She paused. You'll want to bring any legal paperwork that contradicts what we received. I looked at the binder sitting on my kitchen table. I've got plenty. After the call, I turned off all the lights except one over the sink. I stood there for a moment, the glow catching the edge of the binder spine. They taught me to be polite, to not raise my voice, to apologize even when I wasn't wrong. But they never taught me what to do when I stopped caring what they thought. And now they'd picked the wrong thing to forge. Morning broke, with the kind of chill that didn't come from the weather. My shoes echoed through the office lobby, muted by the heavy carpet, but my steps were precise. I'd worn navy clean professional forgettable. I didn't need to stand out today. I needed to stand tall. At 9:26, me. Our front desk buzzed. Jenny Sharon, the receptionist, called across the open space. "There's a delivery for you." I turned toward her just as a man in a grey blazer stepped into view, holding a document tube and a clipboard. "Jenny Monroe." He asked, expression neutral. I nodded. "You've been served." He placed the envelope in my hands, had me sign, and left before I could say a word. I walked back to my desk, slowly sat down and peeled the seal open. Civil Complaint Monroe v. Monroe. I scanned it. Paragraphs of inflated claims. They accused me of embezzling family funds intended for the original wedding, claimed I had authorized venue upgrades outside agreed budgets, that I'd suffered repeated emotional instability that rendered me unfit to manage financial matters. My name was twisted into a caricature of chaos. The lawsuit didn't just seek money. It sought to label me untrustworthy, volatile, dangerous around me. The office hummed too quietly. I felt eyes flick toward me and away just as quickly. I closed the packet, opened my email, and typed subject re-defamation claim, Monroe family. Add this filing to our counterclaim. Defamation, malicious intent, reputational damage. Let's respond swiftly. I didn't need revenge that made noise. I needed revenge that came with a docket number. That afternoon, the door of the past opened wide. A call came through to my work line from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Jenny." "Jenny, it's Victor Lang." I leaned back. Victor had been my mother's PR shield for as long as I could remember. He'd been the man who spun Julia's missteps into inspirational quotes. The one who'd told newspapers that our family was resilient when whispers of misused funds at her charity circled 10 years ago. Now he sounded like someone playing both sides. "I just wanted to reach out," he said, smoothing his tone like a politician, "and say you might want to let this play out quietly. Sometimes the noise dies faster if you don't feed it." "You're worried about Julia's image," I replied. "You should be. It's hanging by a thread, and this time she's the one who handed me the scissors." There was a pause, a deep inhale. "Jenny, these things spiral. Be smart." "I am being smart." "That's what scares you." I ended the call. That evening I stayed off social media, but the universe didn't return the favor. My phone buzzed with a notification. Julia Monroe posted a new status update. I didn't click right away. I waited, took a sip of the chamomile tea I didn't want but had made out of habit. Then I opened it. "It's hard being a mother," it began. "You try to raise your children with compassion. You sacrifice, you guide. But sometimes when pain twists, a child's view, all they can see is betrayal. Where there was once love, there was no name, but everyone knew who it was about." The comments poured in. People from church, neighbors from our old block, Karen's new in-laws. "She's lucky to have you as a mother. Some kids just turn bitter no matter what you give them. I've seen this before. It's the money. Always the money." I printed the post, all 57 comments. Highlighted names, took screenshots of every mutual connection who clicked like. Then I handed them to my attorney. "Don't respond," she said. "I won't, but you will." We began outlining our timeline when Karen first asked for the deposit loan. When Julia sent me the budget spreadsheet that later reallocated assets when the house was listed with my name on the agreement, when the Dropbox folder was mysteriously wiped. I didn't need to argue with strangers online. I had a courtroom. 3 days later, an email came through just after breakfast. Court date confirmed. Monroe Civil Division Room 204 hearing set for 3 weeks out. I stared at the date. Then my reflection in the kitchen window blurred by the morning haze. They wanted to embarrass me, silence me, redefine me, but the only thing they'd accomplished was sharpening my resolve. I turned from the window and spoke out loud to no one but myself. You want a public fight? Fine, but I'm bringing every truth you buried. After I closed the email confirming the court date, I didn't sit down. I didn't scroll through more evidence or rehearse possible questions. I walked straight to the living room window, pulled back the curtain, and stared out into the quiet early evening stillness. The streetlights flickered on as the sky dimmed, and I stood there in silence, one hand gripping the edge of the curtain, the other resting against my thigh, steady and warm. This was no longer about my wedding. It hadn't been for a while. This was about years of being told what I was allowed to want and who I was allowed to be. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and created a new folder. I titled it simply Truth. Then I wrote the first post. No preamble, no emotional introduction, just a headline. My name is Jenny Monroe, and here's what they erased. Underneath, I dropped in screenshots one by one. Bank transfers from my account to Karen's over the past 5 years labelled venue deposit, catering emergency travel reimbursement. The agreement my mother had handwritten initialed JM with promises to reimburse half the wedding expenses once family stability was achieved. A clipped video shaky from my phone camera of Julia sitting in my apartment kitchen last spring. Her voice low, sharp, if you love him, you'll sign it. If you don't, you'll destroy everything we've built for you. Do you want to be another mistake? I added the Venmo Trail the Florist invoice with both our names but only my signature. The guest list with red lines over my friends' names. No commentary, no hashtags, just cold, careful documentation. I hit post and turned off the screen. When I woke up at 6:20 the next morning, the thread had been shared over 3,000 times. Comments rolled in faster than I could read. Strangers, former classmates, quiet supporters who had watched from the sidelines for years, and people asking questions. Why would a family do this to their daughter? Jenny, you're not alone. This is what generational manipulation looks like. At 7:02 my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I picked up anyway. Jenny Karen's voice said brittle and shaking. What the hell are you doing? I'm telling the truth, I said simply. You've made Mom look bad. You've made all of us look damaged. I waited. You think the internet is going to fix this? She hissed. You think they'll love you for tearing us apart in public? No, I replied calmly. I think they'll understand that I stopped letting someone else define me. There was silence. Then I added she tore us apart behind closed doors. I just stopped pretending it didn't happen. I ended the call, then blocked the number. By noon, my lawyer called to confirm we were ready to submit the final counterclaim. I added the new evidence, she said. Are you sure you want to include the notarized statement from the accountant? Yes, I answered. She was complicit. She gets named. That document had been a surprise. An old family accountant had come forward quietly after reading my post. She had resigned years ago, citing health reasons. In her notarized letter, she confirmed that Julia had rerouted donations meant for a charity account set up under my name into a separate trust, controlled solely by her and my father. She included dates, transfer logs, even scanned copies of altered receipts. This wasn't just an ugly divorce from my family. It was financial fraud on paper in ink, and all of it had my name tied to it without my consent. The updated counterclaim listed breach of fiduciary duty, financial misrepresentation, emotional distress, unjust enrichment. We printed it on ivory stock and had it hand-delivered. I didn't check Facebook again that day, but that night as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed once more. This time from an unknown number I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the screenshot folder and scrolled through them one by one until my breathing evened out. The next morning arrived with a steady drizzle. I dressed in a slate grey blouse, hair pulled back, heels low but firm. I didn't want to make a statement. I wanted to be the one who stood when everyone else sat down. The courthouse hallway was quiet. Pale green walls, long benches. Karen was already seated near the far end, her lawyer beside her. She looked up when I entered but said nothing. Julia stood near the wall, arms crossed, avoiding my eyes entirely. A man with a press badge stepped forward. "Ms. Monroe," he asked quietly, "do you have anything you'd like to say before we go in?" I looked past him through the door that would open onto rows of polished seats, recorded testimony, and legal arguments. Then I met his gaze. "Just this," I said. "When someone tells you silence is love, they're usually trying to keep you from speaking." The courtroom doors opened with the kind of hush that follows a storm, not precedes one. A bailiff called our case, and I stepped forward with my attorney beside me, heart steady, breath deliberate. I wasn't trembling. Not anymore. The nerves had burned off weeks ago. What was left now was clarity. Karen sat across the aisle, shifting in her seat. Her lawyer whispered something, but she wasn't listening. Julia remained standing near the edge of the room, hands clenched tight around a stack of papers. Lyle was there too, though he seemed more like a figure propped up than a participant. He avoided my gaze the entire time. The judge, an older woman with hair pulled tightly into a bun and a voice that brooked no posturing, asked both sides to keep emotions out of their presentations. "This isn't a reality show," she said bluntly. "It's civil court. Facts, please." I let my lawyer do most of the talking. Contracts, transfers, recorded conversations. We submitted everything. When it was their turn, Julia's side attempted to argue emotional instability, to which the judge raised an eyebrow and asked for clinical documentations. None was provided. By the end of it, there were no slammed gavels, no dramatic gasps. The ruling was measured. Independent audits to be conducted. Jenny Monroe granted temporary legal authority over disputed funds and all remaining property matters to be resolved through civil mediation. When it was over, Julia didn't speak. Karen stormed out. Lyle followed without looking back. I didn't smile. That wasn't what this was for. This wasn't about walking out victorious. This was about finally standing. 2 weeks passed before I returned to the Monroe house, what used to be home. I arrived unannounced mid-afternoon, holding a manila folder with the final settlement papers and the release form removing my name from the deed. The front door wasn't locked. I walked through my heels, soft against the hardwood floors. The hallway smelled the same lavender and furniture polish, but it didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. I paused in the kitchen, ran my hand along the edge of the counter where I used to help bake pies for Thanksgiving, passed by the staircase I once sat at during high school arguments, stood at the doorway of my old bedroom and barely recognized the girl who used to cry into her pillow every time her mother told her, "You're just too much." Nothing had changed. Everything had. I placed the folder on the kitchen table. Then I pulled my old keys from my coat pocket, set them gently on top. I didn't knock. I didn't wait for anyone to find me. I just stepped out and let the door click shut behind me. A few days later, a plain white envelope arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a personal check. The memo read, reimbursement for dress, venue, and emotional damages. The amount $31, $320, an exact match for what I'd tallied in one of my earlier spreadsheets. No note, no apology, just the check. I didn't cash it. I framed it underneath the glass on a small brass plate I had engraved. Proof that they knew. It didn't make me whole, but it told me I hadn't imagined any of it. Another week passed before I heard from Mara again. Her name popped up on my screen during a quiet Friday morning at a cafe by the river. I saw what you did. Her message read, "If you ever need a partner for what's next, I'm in." I took a sip of my coffee, watching a pair of ducks skim across the surface of the water. My laptop was open, cursor blinking on a new document titled Monroe and Wells, Advocacy and Legal Planning for Women in Crisis. The idea had been brewing ever since the courthouse, because for every woman like me who found her way through the noise, there were 10 more still stuck inside it, wondering if they were the problem, eh? I set my mug down, typed the first sentence of the mission statement, then stopped to read it back aloud. "Freedom isn't loud," I whispered. "Sometimes it's just the sound of no one calling you back." And that more than any verdict or headline was the ending I'd been waiting for. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones fought in courtrooms or over dinner tables. They're the ones where you finally choose yourself over being accepted. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that family isn't built on silence or submission. It's built on respect, accountability, and the freedom to speak your truth, even when it shakes the room. I didn't win by hurting them. I won by stepping away, by reclaiming the parts of me they tried to rewrite. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Closure doesn't always look like justice served in headlines. Sometimes it's just peace and a quiet morning where no one's trying to control your life anymore. What about you? Have you ever stayed silent to keep the peace only to realize you were sacrificing yourself in the process? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't sit right with you, let me know why. I'm here to listen. If you'd like to hear more stories, like this real, raw, and deeply human, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next. You deserve to be heard. Let's keep the conversation.